chapter 31, verses 10 through 31. Proverbs 31, verses 10 through 31. An excellent wife who can find? For her worth is far above jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She looks for wool and flax and works with her hands in delight. She is like merchant ships. She brings her food from afar. She rises also while it is still night, and gives food to her household and portions to her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. From her earnings she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. She extends her hand to the poor, and she stretches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of the snow for her She is not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. She makes coverings for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and bless her, her husband also, and he praises her, saying, Many daughters have done nobly, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the product of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Kyle, for a wonderful reading. What a wonderful place to come and be with God's people, celebrate God's blessings, and offer our thanksgiving, our praise, our worship for all the good things that our Father has done for us. Many wonderful things going on here at Mountain Creek, and we're so thankful to have so many guests today, so many people here in honor of their mothers and their grandmothers and their family members and the people who have loved them and loved us so dearly. I too want to say to all of you moms, Happy Mother's Day. And I'm thankful to be here with you, but I'm also a little bit melancholy that I can't be with my mother today, because she has made so many sacrifices for me, as I know you have for your children. And it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to remember and to celebrate the blessings of mothers. That's what I want us to talk about for a few minutes today, is motherhood and wifehood, and what the Bible has to say about it. By way of introduction, we are given specific instructions. In the old law, there was a specific command, the violation of which, if you persisted in rebellion against your parents, the penalty was death. But in Leviticus 19:3, it says, Every one of you shall reverence his mother and his father. A commandment of the law of Moses. Reverence your mother and your father. In the wisdom literature, Proverbs 23, verse 25, Let your father and your mother be glad, and let her rejoice who gave birth to you. Solomon, in his wisdom, recognizes that children have a powerful ability to disappoint their parents. And I know that personally, because I'm a child and I have disappointed my parents from time to time. But the Bible specifically instructs us, take your parents' praise and your parents' hopes and dreams for you, and use that as a curb on your choices. Use that as a motivation for how you proceed through life. The New Testament is similar. It quotes the Old Testament but adopts the same instruction. Ephesians 6, verses 1 and 2. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is good. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise. I show these three passages to you to make the point that the Bible holds up motherhood as important. And it holds how children treat their mothers and their fathers as extremely important. And for a little while this morning, I'd like for us to think about why that is. Or more specifically, what about motherhood in particular the Bible holds up. That's why I asked Brother Kyle to read this passage from Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31 is such a beautiful discussion of motherhood and wifehood, of what it is to be a good and virtuous wife and mother. God respects mothers who work hard. Children respect their mothers because they work hard. Look at what he says here in verse 15 of Proverbs 31. At the end of verse 14 it says, she brings her food from afar. Verse 15, she rises also while it is still night. My mother always got up before I did. My wife gets up before our children do. And gives food to her household and portions to her babies. My mother always fed me until my wife started feeding me. And it's a tiring and seemingly sometimes thankless job because it is hard work. I don't know if any of you have ever been through what I've been through, but I've had a hard life from time to time. It wasn't very long ago that my wife left, and my three children were alone with me for over 24 hours. And I had to feed them. I had to wash them. I had to keep up with where they were. And I'm not kidding. It's hard work. It wore me completely out. And there are a lot of other fathers who feel the same way. And there are grandmothers and grandfathers and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters who feel the same way. When we went to Israel last year, we came back. And you can't imagine the relief that I saw in my parents' eyes when we finally got there. They were completely exhausted from keeping our three children for 11 days. That was a long time. Mothers do it every day. Every day. I'm horrified at the thought that I might have to do that. And I'm not joking. I know it's funny, but it's true. It's hard work. Look at verse 18. She senses that her gain is good. Her lamp does not go out at night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hands grasp the spindle. This woman works with her hands. She washes clothes. She washes dishes. She cooks food. She picks up. She dusts. She vacuums. She mops. She writes down. She makes lists. She picks up. She drops off. Everywhere, all the time. It seems like it never ends. Down to verse 24, that's not all she does. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies belts to the tradesmen. Mothers, here's what I think God is saying to you. I recognize that you work hard. And I respect the virtue of your hard work. And you may think that there's no end to it. You may think that there's no value in it. You may think that you're not doing anything important. But God says it's important. God said, this is what I want you to do. A mother's job is hard work. But it's what God placed mothers here to do. And you let me do it for a day, and it wipes me out. My wife can do it for months on end. She's made differently than I am. My mother worked my entire life growing up. She retired 2 or 3 years ago. But from the time I was born until the time I was 34 or 35, she worked at the bank every day. But when she came home, she did the laundry, she did the dishes, she did the cooking. She did it all. It may seem like it's not fair. It may not be fair. But it's how we're made. My dad worked outside. When he got home, we would go out and we would farm and we would work and we would try to make extra money. But he didn't do the dishes and he didn't do the cooking very often. And that's how men and women are made. It's important that we not rebel against these things. You see this woman in Proverbs 31, she works outside the house. She's involved in business. She's buying and selling fields. She's selling garments to tradesmen. But she's also taking care of her house. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 14, God is giving instructions to widows, but he gives a picture of what he wants young women to do. He says, therefore I want younger widows to get married, bear children, keep house, and give the enemy no occasion for reproach. The New American Standard there says keep house. Most translations say guide the house or manage the house. It is an extremely important function, an extremely important job, and husbands, God has entrusted those functions most of the time to your wives. Wives, most of the time, God has entrusted those functions to you. And it's important that we see that as God's choice and not something that has been foisted upon us. Don't be afraid to accept God's voice. My girls asked me last week, and we weren't talking, we were actually talking about Mother's Day, I think. But my girls said, we were driving to school, and they said, why does Mommy not work? And I thought, are you kidding? She works 3 times harder than I do. I said, well, she does work. She works at home. And oh, why doesn't she work to make money? And I told them, I said, it's because we value her being home and taking care of you and teaching you more than we value the money that she could make. And she did work. She worked until Lauren was a year old or more. And when she quit her job, she made more than I did. But her quitting and staying home has been one of the best things for our family that's ever happened. I wish we had done it before we did. It's not wrong to work outside the home. It's not wrong to have 2 incomes. But it's important to understand and to embrace God's role for the management of the house and for the raising of a family. And however God allows you to do it, make sure you do it within his instructions. And ladies, God admires your hard work. He really does. Secondly,